Hey, what up, young scholars? It's your boy, the extra large professor, here from Dad Cypher. And I'm here to break down and always look at to look at pop culture and talk about how they depict fathers of color. And so for today's episode, I want to talk to you guys about C.L. Franklin, the depiction of C.L. Franklin and genius Aretha Franklin. First of all, my man Courtney Vance, Moolah. I tell you, man, I have never seen a guy that was able to play a pimp slash preacher so well. Now, I will say this, if you haven't seen Genius, you got to check it out. I mean, my man Courtney has his hair slicked back, just like the great C.L. Franklin and that sort of thing. And but I want to talk to you guys about this whole idea of, how they depicted him as a father. For those who don't know, C.L. Franklin is the man with the $1 million voice. He is Aretha Franklin father. And he is the one, I guess you could say, responsible for bringing her, to fame. He helped to introduce her to music and that sort of thing. So I want to just look at this depiction. First and foremost, I want to say this. In the movie Genius, I don't really know how much of the story was true and how much was it not true. But I will say this. The review that I'm about to give is really looking at him as a dad. First and foremost, it's the way Courtney Vance depicted C.L. Franklin as a father. First and foremost, I want to say this. When you talk about C.L. Franklin, you have to understand that this was a black man that was born in the 1920s. To a family of sharecroppers. And so right away, you have to think about this was a time where if you're a black male, you weren't designed to make it. You were just trying to do hard work and trying to just survive. But he was blessed with $1 million voice for singing and sermons. And he was a prolific speaker. If you ever listen to any of his sermons, they are soul stirring. So much so that this man was able to eke out an existence and make a living by preaching and giving sermons and singing. And he was the first black preacher to be placed on an album. So this is before rappers. This dude was dropping hot 16, bars of sermons. And so the thing is, when you have overcome an environment of sharecropping and you have become larger than life, no one really prepares you for what fame is going to do. Now, all of a sudden, now that you're a man and you have the power of the mic, you have a lot of women that's going to be drawn to you. And when we're talking about the 1940s, they're not used to seeing a black man being able to speak, period. We're talking about this is Jim Crow, let me slap you upside the face for being black South. This is a black man that's able to really speak truth to power. And of course, he had a lot of women that was in the church that were drawn to that, to see a man that had that much power. And I hate to say it to you guys, but you have to understand this, that even to today, when a preacher speaks up on the mic, women are drawn to him. Even as much as we love Martin Luther King and that sort of thing, he had several women in the church that were drawn to him. So much so that they would do a little sin. That's happening. We have to be able to separate the man from the word. But I want to get back to this whole topic of what it means to be a father. So when you talk about being a father and you're growing up and you're witnessing trauma, and you've come out of that traumatic situation, you come out of the mud, you come out of the projects, you come out of the farm town, and you have made a name for yourself. And now you have 1 million people pulling on you because of what you can do. And this man has, like I said, made himself the man with the $1 million voice. And then on top of that, he becomes a father to a future legend, a legendary singer, the queen of soul, Aretha Franklin. What we see and what we can learn from this is that in father-daughter relationships, it's a difference in power dynamics. When you are a father, it's a lot of pressure placed on you to control your daughters. And in particular, when you're talking about being a PK, a preacher kid, it's really talking about really trying to have control over their sexuality. C.L. Franklin was definitely placed in an awkward situation. One, because Aretha was a mother by the age of 12. And also he had to deal with the fact that as a dad, he actually kind of placed her, at least based on the film, placed her in situations where she would be around adults that maybe she shouldn't have been around. C.L. Franklin hung around pimps and hustlers, as well as preachers and civil rights leaders. So, in a sense, he was like Jesus, hanging out with the rich and hanging out with the poor. But that association may have led to Aretha having a child before she was ready. So I imagine he probably was dealing with that pain. And I imagine that he felt a need to have more control over every facet of her life, because maybe he felt like as a father and as a preacher, he should have done a better job. By the time she was 19, by the time she was 20, I believe she was the mother of like 3 to 4 children. And I think it was very hard for CL to, try to deal with these roles. The world is seeing you larger than life, and yet they're seeing, your shortcomings as a man and shortcomings as a father. But I would say one of the things that we can learn in our power dynamics with our young daughters is to realize that as much as we want to, we can't control the dynamics of their sexuality. All we could do is try to guide our daughters. We cannot control every facet of what they are, because guess what? If you become have too much of an iron fist on their sexuality, then they can rebel in that way. What you have to do is have a sense of coaching and learning when to let go. One of our greatest charges, I think, as a dad, is to try to protect our daughters. But nobody ever tells us as fathers when to relinquish that control. How do we do that? Nobody tells us, hey, Dad, it's time to step back and let our daughters blossom and go into their own. And when we think about a preacher who has been given power by his voice, who has been given power over so many people, the world in which we live tell people about how to achieve power, but it doesn't give us lessons on how to relinquish it. So I would say, if anything we can learn from the film Genius is to learn that it's okay to relinquish power at times with our daughters to allow them to grow. And so we have to think about those sort of things. Last but not least, I want to talk about favoritism. Every parent, and I'm looking straight at the camera, every parent has a favorite child. Don't let them try to tell you they do not. They all do. But I don't look at it as favoritism. Maybe it's more placeism. Sometimes certain kids have a certain place in your heart. It doesn't mean that the other kids are less valuable, but maybe you just have more in common with that other kid. Think about this. For every Michael Jackson, there's a Tito. Now, I'm pretty sure Joe Jackson was like, he loved Tito, but Mike probably had his heart a little bit more. I would say that with C.L. Franklin. I would say he loved his daughters, But at the same time, Aretha became his favorite for a reason. You get drawn to people who are in power, are drawn to people who have power. And that's not to say other kids aren't special, but sometimes some people are Michael Jackson and other people are Tito. You got to just deal with that. So I would say this, man, to any father out there, just just remember that we just have to do a better job at protecting our daughters, but also to learn how to relinquish power when necessary so that they can grow. For kids, I would say don't get so caught up in who your parents' favorite is. All you can do is keep running your race. It doesn't matter, if you're a favorite to mom or dad. What matters is what you mean for yourself and that sort of thing. So, try to be the best you can be. Um, I would say, with that being said, make sure that you guys check out Aretha Franklin's Genius. Courtney Vance does an amazing job depicting C.L. Franklin, and let us learn some lessons from him. So, with that being said, this is the extra large professor, Dad Cypher, and I'm out. Peace.